Hey, Christy Mattoon here from Mind Rewire. I'm super glad to be back with you again. This is part 4 of this special series on combating subconscious stress so that you can walk away feeling good. This particular portion of this series is about autoimmune disease and subconscious stress and how the two are interlaced together. And if you're trying to figure out your disease patterns and symptoms and you're doing all the stuff right, but there's something still not quite right, stay tuned because this might really help you. Christy Mattoon here with Mind Rewire. We're talking about subconscious stress and autoimmune disease and how the two are intricately woven together. So when you're thinking about subconscious stress and subconscious patterns, the stuff that's locked up in your subconscious mind, you have to stop and wonder, what all does it affect inside your life? What all does it affect inside your body? It's a really interesting thing. If you've got issues and symptoms from disease problems, disease issues, sometimes understanding that the subconscious stress, the things that you've gone through in your past, actually can play a role in keeping your disease process alive and active. So when you're combating and fighting against all of these diseases, all the symptoms, trying to get them, trying to come underneath them and figure out what's actually causing them. One doctor, I think his name was Brad Nelson, Dr. Brad Nelson, he was on the movie Emotion from Gaia. He said this is kind of like the elephant in the living room of Western medicine. It's that thing that nobody ever really takes a look at, but it's also that one thing that could be what's keeping your symptoms alive and moving forward. Are you doing your diet right? Have you been sticking to it? Did you clean your system out? Did you do all the cleanses and all the protocols that get rid of parasites, get rid of toxic metals, get rid of those kind of things? Did you do the exercise routines? Did you take care of the physical body in such a way that maybe you either lost a ton of weight or you were finally able to put some on? No matter which way it was, if you're still struggling in symptoms and something still just isn't quite right, your subconscious past or your stress from the past could be an area to look at. What happens inside your body when you have an issue from the past is that it correlates to emotions that correlate to chemicals that are emitted into your body and by your body. They're actually created by your body. Your brain goes into fight and flight and starts kicking in the chemicals of cortisol and adrenaline. Those two chemicals by themselves over a long period of time will start to wreck your body out. The cortisol causes belly fat. The cortisol in your system really causes inflammation. It's blowing your body up in ways and acting along with our food supply, the chemicals and all the junk that's in our food supply, and destroying your gut. Over time, we know that cortisol will actually cause heart problems. It causes many other things too, but that's what science and that's what medicine has related it to. If we take a look at it by itself, when your gut starts to get that bloated and that big, you're literally just tearing apart your intestines. The inflammation and the stress that's in there from the cortisol and the levels rising and falling over time are just going to destroy the tissue. It'll happen in your joints, it'll happen in your organs, and it'll happen in your glands. And so over time, subconscious stress, left unchecked, will start to derail your health. Over time, it could be the thing that if you actually recognize it, that will actually start a healing protocol or a healing that'll probably blow your mind. I know in my own process, after I hit 300 pounds, and I started to recognize the things that were harming my system. I mean, first of all, I was obese. The obesity is what was addressed. The fact that I had other issues and symptoms from my past was never really addressed until after everything else was taken care of. So we addressed the obesity. Then we started addressing the disease symptoms, right? I had all of these symptoms. I had hair loss. I had skin issues. I had cancers on my face. I had skin cancers. I had bloating, I had joint pain, I had headaches, I had brain fog, I had weird feelings under my skin that I couldn't describe. I had this weird quaking deep inside my body that I never could describe. I know now what that is, but back then I had no idea. They associate it with Hashimoto's, but it's not a Hashimoto issue. It's not a thyroid problem. What it is a symptom of having glyphosate poisoning. When your body starts quaking like that, it's because it's got an overload of toxic chemicals. And those toxic chemicals are going to cause your body to quake that way. So understanding those kind of things are going to help you start to resolve some of the symptoms and issues. What I have found out with my own journey was that I did the diet. I got the diet spot on. I lost weight. Against all the odds, with no hormones in my system. And actually, they were giving me fake hormones. They were giving me all kinds of stuff at that point. Lost the weight with the thyroid problems going on, the hormone issues going on, and started to resolve some of the symptoms a little bit at a time. But that as soon as one would get resolved, another one would rev up, and it just made no sense. What I figured out was that when your subconscious stress keeps kicking back in and all of a sudden you get a hit of these chemicals in your system, it's like throwing gasoline on a fire and it just starts erupting in your system with symptoms. When I started actually addressing the subconscious and the stress that was coming from my past, that's when the bulk of my symptoms started to go away. I had seen a psychiatrist for a number of years who helped me discover that I didn't know my childhood. But in that discovery, he passed me along to another doctor who decided I was bipolar, and we never addressed that problem. We just kind of let it go. Over time, as I started recognizing some of this stuff, the correlation between all of it started to make sense. And when I figured out that that was where it was coming from, I started learning protocols and ways to actually combat the subconscious stress and start to reverse those symptoms in my system. When that happened, all of a sudden it made sense. When I understood how the subconscious mind worked, that it doesn't know time, that you can actually go all the way back to the very beginning and reset the system and get a totally different outcome in the way you feel, the way you act, the way you think. You can talk to the cells of your body and give them different information. That information equates to the environment that you put them in. Remember, in the first part of this series, we talked about environment. We talked about the epigenetics of a cell and the genetic expression. And it's all based on the environment that you put the cell in. And so you can go back, because your subconscious mind doesn't know time, you can go all the way back and we can give your body new information. We can give your brain new information and then walk it back forward in time to the age that you are right now. And suddenly your brain is believing different things about yourself that before you may not have known, because you were told you were stupid, you were ugly, you're not good enough, you can't do that, you'll never make it. Or whatever the thing was, whatever the trauma came out of, whatever the words were, you can reverse it by going back into the system before the thing ever began and give yourself a different way to think about it. That's the interesting part of the subconscious mind. With autoimmune disease, this gets super interesting because you were led to believe things. You were told things by doctors, nurses, maybe your friends, other people around you. It was scary figuring out parts of your symptoms, parts of your issues, even the disease itself. Going through it was scary. So along the way, if you didn't have subconscious stress before, you developed it. Because along the way, gathering all of a sudden all of these diseases and symptoms and junk going on inside your body, you went into flight and fight at some point, listening to a doctor, realizing you had an issue, finding out that there was a big problem. And if at that moment that didn't get cleared up, it's followed you in the resounding days. And you go on and on and on, leaving that inside your system. And what does that do? It keeps the issue revved up in your system, just like mine was. Where does autoimmune disease start from to begin with? It can start from many different places, right? And that's not actually even the question. The question is, if we know that subconscious problems can solve, or subconscious stress can be solved and calm down the symptoms and the issues that you're having with your disease process, why aren't we looking at it a little bit harder? Why aren't we looking at it from this avenue a little bit more? There's a lot of theory on that one too. From pharmaceutical companies to hospitals and doctors and everything else. And I won't even go into that because that's not what we're talking about today. But the point is, you can come at this from many angles. One of it is the food supply. Clean up your food supply. Change your diet, change your body, right? Everything will start to change. Build a little bit of muscle mass. Muscle moves things differently than the lack of muscle. Muscle moves things, chemicals, blood, oxygen, differently than fat. You'll have a whole different outcome if you have some muscle mass on your body. Whole different outcome. When those two things are in place and you're feeling pretty good, you get it rolling the right way, and then all of a sudden something flares up, and we call it a flare. I had a flare. I don't know why. I don't know what I did. I'm eating right. I'm exercising. I'm doing my meditation, right? I'm tapping. The list of stuff that we do is endless, but I still had a flare. What's that all about? That's when I start asking myself, okay, what kind of stress were you under at some point? Where did it come from? If you have the feeling in your body associated to whatever that flare was and however that made you feel, we can trail it back and figure it out. It doesn't mean that we necessarily figure out where the issue exactly came from, the moment in time, whatever was said, whatever happened, whatever was done. But we can start to desynchronize that feeling out of your system, talk to your cells different, give you a different thing to feel, a different feeling in your body. And so raise the chemicals up to meet the feeling of co-creation, because now you got to co-create. We got to recreate what this physical body looks like for you. You got to recreate the cells, the structure, the genetic sequencing, the code, right? You got to reset it. We got to flip that switch. Once you can do that, that's when things have really effectively changed. And so that's the goal. I want to thank you for being here. This is an interesting subject. It's something that if you want to work on and you're truly interested in, please hit me up at mindrewire.com. I'd love to talk to you more about it and what this could look like in the scope of your process and your journey as far as healing an autoimmune disease. Join me tomorrow on part 5 of this series, because what we're going to talk about is connecting your head, heart, and gut brains, right? They each have their own little brain. And so we're going to connect them all and let you feel life a little bit differently. And it's going to get you on a road to understand that you have a choice in the way you feel no matter what it is you're going through. Whether it's stress from an autoimmune issue, whether it's pain from an accident, pain from a person doing something to you, whether it's the issues of your past that just keep spinning around in your head, we're going to learn how to process them differently tomorrow so that you can start to feel differently. Thank you again so much for being here. My name is Christy Mattoon, and this is Mind Rewire. I will look forward to seeing you tomorrow.